Andy Hamilton of Trackwrestling here with new Battle of Waterloo Hall of Famer Bob Buckley going into the class this year. You just had the chance to speak at the induction ceremony. One of the stories I think that you told, and you can retell it better than me, was just how this came together, how the allegiance between the National Wrestling Hall of Fame, Gable Museum, and the National Wrestling Hall of Fame came together. You were instrumental in that. Can you share that for the people across the country?
Yeah, well, I can certainly share my perspective, being the one that from this side helped lead it. I think we were at a point where we had succeeded here and we're doing great things, but respected and understood what the Hall of Fame was doing, and thought that it made no sense for the two of us to be playing in the same lane, where we could get together and bring Gable and the National Wrestling Hall of Fame together, and we feel and have done some great things for the sport. And so it was a challenge. Obviously, Oklahoma and Iowa is not the greatest friends when it comes to wrestling, and I got to sit Dan and Leroy down and say, hey, let's bury the hatchet and let's move this sport forward. And we did. And Leroy's a class guy, and Dan is. And both want nothing more than to move the sport. So it ended out working out great. It took a little bit to kind of get the Okies and the Iowans and everybody on the same page, and it was interesting, but great experience. And we got it done. And we just finished renovating the Hall of Fame in Stillwater, and we're in the middle of a campaign here to renovate this. And, just the synergy that's brought together by having the two. They're the preservation of the sport and the history, and here we're doing some different things with the Gable Teaching Center, and in the wrestling room we're tripling the size. We're able to impact lives of young people directly, from this facility, where it's a little harder to do in Stillwater. So it's been a great merge. Great people from all over the United States involved in that, and it's just worked out really well.
When you mentioned Leroy, you're talking Leroy Smith.
Leroy Smith.
Big renovation plans, as you mentioned. What are people going to see in here in the future?
Well, if you had a chance to be to Stillwater, if you haven't, I would recommend anybody that loves the sport, because we worked with a company out of Kansas City that specializes in that. They were the one that just did the Big Ten, corporate offices in the Big Ten and several Hall of Fames, and they're very good with interactivity, and they know how to bring technology and interactivity to enhance the experience that people have when they go. And so Stillwater turned out phenomenal. I had the privilege of being very involved in that. So we're basically trying to bring the same plans and ideas here. We're going to triple the size of the Gable Teaching Center. We're going to bring technology into that area, where hopefully we'll be able to go to many of our great inductees in the Hall of Fame, Gable being one of them, John Smith hopefully is one of them, Leroy himself, and bring their spin on teaching and technique and things in a digital video form. And then whatever we're doing here, be able to just push a button and bring them up live and be able to interact with the kids in the room. So we're really trying to impact lives from that manner. And then obviously out here, just the same thing in Stillwater. We're using technology. I think you heard me say, if you go to Stillwater and when you come here, thanks to the NCAA for lending us all of the video from 1937 forward of the final matches in the NCAA matches. And that's cool. I mean, I saw the kids and how their eyes lit up when they could just go in there and see all these old great matches they hear about. So I want to bring that to Waterloo also, and bring it into the 20th century. It's a great place, got a lot of history here. But we live in a world of technology, and if we're going to reach young people and impact their lives, we got to be able to integrate that technology. So we're having a campaign right now for the Waterloo. We're raising $1.4 million, and I think we're about 500,000 on the way. And we continue that process. And we're doing the design. We're actually going to finish the design probably in January. We have some meetings planned. I'll be in Kansas City with those folks. So we're just keeping it going.
You mentioned the opportunity that kids will have to learn from the likes of Gable and the Smiths. You had the chance to be a high schooler when Gable was making his Olympic run.
I did.
What was that like?
Well, I was a junior in high school, and of course I had known Dan before that. And anybody that wrestled at West knew him because he was in the room a lot. And as I said in my comments, he'd bring the Peterson brothers home with him, and Chuck Jean and Chris Taylor, and of course I was a 185 pounder at the time, so I got to jump on Chris Taylor's back and just hang on because that was all there was. I mean, when he finally decided to move, it was all over. But it was just a great opportunity to have. John Bowlesby I wrestled with, who is now on the board of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. Also, Southmore made the junior world team. Beat a 20-year-old in the finals. Southmore in high school. I mean, that's what was in our room at the time. Bob Fouts ended up wrestling at Iowa State, but you had Olympic gold medal winners coming through our room, so it kept you humble. If you thought you were good, you realized you might be good, but you're not great because greatness is all around you. But it certainly helped you pursue greatness and other things in life, and that's what we want to do here. Both the Hall of Fames. We have to impact kids if we're going to impact the sport. And we've got to bring the sport and impact their lives, not just their wrestling, but impact their lives. And if we can do that, we're going to put, great young men, young women out there, and hopefully some great wrestlers.
You mentioned that it was all around you growing up. And hearing the stories tonight, and the other Hall of Famers, Joe Gibbons, Waterloo Columbus, the impact that some of the greats have had at Waterloo East and Waterloo West. What was it like competing at that point in history for this community?
I don't think we realized it until we got older. At the time, it would seem normal. Everybody around you was good. Chuck Yagla, he was at the other school, but Chuck and I wrestled freestyle together and traveled together. And Chuck works for me. I tease him all the time because he never won a state championship because he couldn't beat a guy from West Waterloo. And he gets mad at me, and I pimped him tonight if you notice in my things. But that's the way it was. And then Chuck goes on, to be OW and win two national championships, beats Lee Kemp in overtime in the finals, and then he makes the 80 Olympic team. But he couldn't beat a kid out of West Waterloo wrestling. That's what it was like in those days. The depth was incredible. I think you heard me say in our wrestling room, we had 10 to 12 guys in every weight class. And they weren't all bad. There were a lot of good wrestlers. I say the guy that was at my weight was an all-state football player and never beat me in a tryout, but wrestled 4 years for Coe College in Division II.
Wow.
Even back then, Coach Siddons, if you wrestled on the JV team, and you were the top 2 point getters on the JV team, you'd get a letter because he said you could make any varsity team in the state of Iowa. And so he rewarded them. So it was great times. And, we're getting old. I can still remember them, but we'd love to get it back to there, This area is still a powerhouse in the outer area, the Waverly, Denver, Don Bosco, still strong programs, but quite honestly, we've got to get some things going in Waterloo. And I think the things we're doing here with the clubs that Kyle's doing, it'll pay off, but it's going to take a while to see the dividends. So.
Well, thank you for your time, Bob. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Yeah.